way, there's a variety of ways easy way to record a lecture is just host a Zoom session with yourself and then just record, and everything's there. All right, so let's do two things today. Since we don't have a guest speaker today, let's first review for the midterm. We were going to do that anyway. We'll review for the midterm, and then I'll stop recording, and then we'll talk about what else we're going to do today. Okay. So I'm just going to get a nice blank slate that I can type on, and I'll switch back and forth between this and Canvas here. So easiest thing to do for the midterm, I'm in student view here on Canvas. So if we go to just go to modules, and you can look at the topics here for the midterm. So let's talk about how the midterm works. It's here in the modules, you've got the midterms broken out into 3 parts. Those will go live on Thursday morning. Those will be password protected. And basically, if you somehow gain the password and access those in a time that is not your scheduled exam time, unless you've told me otherwise, I will go through and zero those out. Okay, so just because you know the password doesn't help you. Just don't access those until it's if it's not your regular class time, make sure you've made arrangements with me to access it otherwise. Okay, if you need to be in the testing center for whatever reason, if you've got something coming up, I know I've got some students in my morning section that are in a school activity and they're not going to be able to be here, so I'm working with them about putting them in the testing center. That's doable, so just let me know, but I do need to know that in advance so I can make prior arrangements. You can see it's broken out into 3 parts here. Right? You've got part A is going to be your fast answers. Those are basically true, false, and multiple choice for the most part. What those are going to be. Most of those are 3 points each. So it's probably, I'm pretty sure all of those are 3 points each. So you can say there's probably 12 questions there in part A. Part B are going to be a variety of points in part B. So part B is going to be, they're longer answers, as I say, essay questions, if you will, but I'm not expecting a full-on essay. Most of them you can probably answer with a sentence or 2. A few of them, if I'm asking you to compare 2 things, then it may be a short paragraph. It might be just a bulleted list of things. If I'm asking you to describe what are the steps to do this, and you can list them out in steps, or you can list them out in a paragraph form. Either way works. Use complete sentences for the most part, makes sense. There's a few places you could probably just use a few word answers, but in general, just complete sentences probably is anywhere from 1 or 2 sentences to a paragraph on that one. And then there's part C is conversions. As we mentioned at the beginning of class, no, you don't have to memorize any conversion factors. That's given the internet and where we are today, there's very little reason to memorize a specific set of conversion factors unless it's just something you use all the time, which you guys aren't there yet. Right? I will give you, what I'll do is I'll print off, and in fact, you can see here this PNG here. I've got a printed version of this. I've sketched a few more things on it, but it's basically a scan of the inside cover of a thermodynamics text. And so it's got all the conversion factors, more than you will need to do the exam. So there's 3 problems there in the conversions, 6 points each. I've printed these, the conversion factor sheet out for you on white paper. You can flip it over and just use that as scratch paper on the back. You don't have to use scratch paper. Just understand you're plugging answers into a computer. So if you put a decimal place in the wrong place, your answer might be correct, but it's off by a factor of 100. The computer is going to mark that as a 0, right? So just be aware of that. I'm happy to give you partial credit if you give me work that I can see what you did and what you did wrong. And if you flip one of the conversion factors over, then that's better than, I can do better than 0. I can do some partial credit if you turn in a scratch paper. You don't have to turn in a scratch paper. If you get all 18 points or you're happy with whatever score you got, don't worry about that. But, okay, so let's talk about rules here. So zoom in. Midterm exam. For us, that is Thursday, the 19th. You get 75 minutes if you need it. If you don't need it, that's no big deal. Feel free to leave when you're done. Okay. Again, it is password protected. Only take it during your scheduled time unless you've arranged another time with me. What else we've got here? Bring a calculator. Not your phone. I know you got cool calculator apps on your phone that are way better than, as good or better than most calculators you can buy. I know that. But you also have access to the internet, and I can't police that very easily. Okay, so not that I don't trust you, it's just I don't trust anybody, honestly. So not your phone. Bring a calculator. It doesn't have to be fancy. I don't mind you using your fancy graphing calculator, even all the way up to the Inspires. I'm okay with those. But you don't have to necessarily have them. Anything that'll do multiplication and division is really all you need for this assignment or for this midterm. Okay, we're just doing some conversion factors, just a couple of them. You just have to be able to do fractions essentially. So multiply and divide is really all you need. I suppose a pencil and a pen or pencil. Right? If you plan on using scratch paper, which I highly recommend, you don't have to, but I highly recommend, bring something to write on that scratch paper with. Okay, you don't have to bring scratch paper, just use the back of the conversion sheets and you'll be good. What else then? Those are the things to bring: calculator, yourself, pen or pencil. If you this doesn't apply to you guys, and I know all you guys, but I know I've got some people that are mostly online. So if you come to class and I've not seen you, but maybe once or twice this semester, I might ask to see an ID because I don't know who you are yet, right? I've done that before. That's kind of a new thing now. We're doing a lot more of the courses kind of in a flex or a hybrid format. So if I don't feel like I know you, I might ask to see identification. Otherwise, that's about it. Talked about 3 parts. Questions about logistics of how the exam is going to work. Come in like normal, log in your computer, fire Canvas out. I'll put the password on the board. You'll have time to work on it. Topics. What is on the midterm? So like we talked about, if you look in here in the topics, basically the PowerPoints in here, kind of a good place to start with what topics to review for the midterm, right? We've talked about history of engineering and innovations. Right? We talked about what were the first fields of engineering, things like that. We talked about what were the factors that prevented or slowed down progress and innovation. We talked about we went from basically the first versions of an automobile to putting a man on the moon in 60, 70 years. And how did we get, number one, why did it take us millennia to get to the point where we could do that rapidly? And then what were the things that enabled us to be able to do it that rapidly? There were a handful of factors we said that we've kind of been able to mitigate over time and control that have allowed us to speed up that progress so rapidly. What else then? So from there, then we talked about so units, conversions, and dimensions. So dimensions are not units. One measures the other. Units are standardized quantity we use to measure dimensions. As I mentioned, you'll be expected to be able to do some conversion factors. If I give you conversion factors to use, I'm asking you to be able to use those correctly. So that's all important topics that show up here. What else? From there, we spent some time and we looked at we spent some time dealing with Microsoft Excel and a little bit about Visual Basic for Applications, VBA. Now, we actually spent a lot of time on that. There's some reasons for that. A lot of the reason we spent a lot of time was to give you guys the opportunity to work here in class and do some problem solving. We talked about what is engineering being the application of existing knowledge, science and math knowledge, to solve practical problems. And so I always kind of view these Excel assignments as a really nice laboratory to give you a chance to practice that a little bit. So give you some basic knowledge. I ask you to apply some algebra, some units, some other knowledge maybe you possess or you can find on the internet, and put all that together in a form and try to do something useful with it. So it's really kind of this, like I said, for an introductory course, I find that serves two purposes. Gives you some problem solving experience, and then also you get really good exposure to Excel, a little bit of exposure to the basic programming and using a Visual Basic language. All skills that are not going to hurt you moving forward. Even if you're not using them directly, you at least know, what a macro is. You've done a little bit of basic programming. Hopefully that's a little less intimidating for you moving forward. Okay, and so all that to say, there's a few questions on the midterm about Excel and VBA. Not where we spend about half of our time working through Excel and VBA to give you guys the opportunity to get some problem solving in. It's not half the exam. It's just kind of keep that in mind. The exam content is not proportional to the amount of time we spend on Excel and VBA. A lot of the questions are basically along the lines of, explain how you would do this, or Professor Fowler wants to do this in Excel. Explain how you would do that. The other thing to mention here about logistics is you should only have Canvas open during the exam, right? So when I ask you how to do something in Excel, I'm not asking you to go to Excel and do the thing. I'm asking you, explain to me roughly how you would do that. And just, it doesn't have to be exact. You got to go to the home tab and 3 buttons over, you click this button and drag it down and click on the 4th option to do no, it doesn't have to be that specific. It's just, how would I do this thing?
So if I solve the entire question by saying I'm going to search in the search bar with this phone.
No. No. That's a good question. That's good.
They're like, explain to us how you would go to Excel and do this. I was just typing in the search bar.
I mean,
it's kind of like looking like I was stupid.
The things I will ask you, I'll put it this way: the things I will ask you, if you worked through the assignments and we're kind of paying attention, you'll have an idea how to explain it. A little beyond just being able to search for it. Yeah. So yeah. Short answer is no. No, a little more detail than that, please. So yeah, so again, you should only have Canvas open during the exam. I'm not interested in your ability to go out and look on the internet. Again, it's not go look in Excel, figure out how to do it, and come back and explain it. It's roughly from your memory how would I go about doing these set of steps. And again, it doesn't have to be exact, but it does have to be good enough and close enough that if somebody read it, and they know how to use Excel, they could go out and do what you're explaining. Okay. So a few questions about Excel and VBA will show up there. What else? So from there, then we moved in, we talked about PE licensure, what it means to be a professional engineer, the process for getting licensed as a professional engineer. And we talked about, we said there's a set of steps. What are the steps involved in becoming a licensed professional engineer? One of those steps was taking the FE exams. There's a PE exam, and there's an FE exam. And we talked about the FE exam and the different topics that show up on the FE exam, that they're a little different for each field, but a lot of those kind of become a standard course that most of you will go on and take in engineering. Bless you. I'm pretty well, everything I'm going to ask you is going to come from these PowerPoints that are made available to you. Okay? Yes, we have a textbook, but I'm not gonna pull stuff that's only in that textbook. all the material I'm gonna put in the midterm shows up within those PowerPoints that you see here within Canvas. From there, we talked about energy, motors, engines, and the concept that governs all of these, the science of thermodynamics. So we had a nice basic discussion of what are engines, what are different types of energy, what's the difference between an engine and a motor, and what are the laws that govern how those devices can convert, move energy around. So all that shows up in at least a basic summary, a few basic summary questions of that shows up in there. I've asked you guys to become experts about 3 fields of engineering. Right? So there will be questions on there asking about the different, or at least asking you to talk about fields of engineering that you know about, right? Or explaining the difference about some common fields of engineering, something along those lines. So obviously you need to know what is engineering or what is an engineer, and then be able to talk intelligibly, communicate at least, that you have some understanding about the different fields of engineering, which, by the way, is one of the main learning outcomes for this course. Is upon completion, a student will be able to explain what engineering is and identify some of the major differences between some major fields of engineering. And I think those are the topics that show up on here, right? There's we're going to talk here in just a little bit about gear ratios. I've already talked about this with my not on making. I've already talked about this topic with my morning section when you guys had a guest speaker earlier. We were going to have a guest speaker today, but you know what? We'll talk about gear ratios because we've got guest speakers all next week, so we'll do that. Okay. Questions about logistics about how the midterm is going to work? Specific concerns, questions about topics on the midterm?
Yeah, do you mind explaining the difference between motor and engine one more time?
Sure. Has to do with the types of energy that's converted. Both of them are responsible for converting one type of energy to another. Your engines are going to take your thermal, your chaotic energy, and convert some of that thermal energy into mechanical energy. So taking heat generated from burning the fuel and converting some of that heat into motion, work, kinetic energy, something. So you've got your thermal energies that are chaotic motion. You've got your mechanical energies where all the molecules or particles are moving in a predictable fashion. Unpredictable, predictable. Your engine's going to take some of this unpredictable energy and convert it into predictable energy. A motor is going to take all predictable energy, so flowing mass, flowing electrons like electricity, and convert that into some other predictable mechanical energy. That's a motor. So like electrical motor is the most common type of motor, where I'm taking energy transmitted by moving electrons and converting that to a rotating shaft or something like that. What else? Cool. Okay, I'm going to stop recording here.